So why a lot of SMEs get to a place where they become big and fail is because they usually are not built for long-term benefits. They're built purely for
Short-term and survival.
And that's a big challenge because that's the kind of business we are setting up. Most of the businesses we are setting up in Africa are primarily SME based for survival.
Yes.
But that's a big challenge because then you end up being trapped in the cycle of poverty, where you become rich, you give money to someone who owns the factors of production, which is a bank in this case. You're unable to pay the bank, they come and take your stuff. They kick you out of your cycle of capitalism. Then you start from scratch building again. But we can avoid that if we learn setting up businesses as startups from the get-go and look at the bigger value we are playing. Then that way we can introduce more people in the business alley to help you navigate some of those challenges when you get to that place. Yep.
Okay, and what is the definition of poverty?
Well, you know, the World Bank defines poverty as someone who's living below $1 a day. I think they moved to $3 a day.
Now we've moved to $3 a day.
I think it's $3 a day.
That's almost 500 shillings.
Yes.
Yes.
But for me, I think that is very abstract. It's abstract in the sense that it is neither here nor there. It's a theory. But essentially, the true meaning of poverty is the inability to access the cycle of capital. That is the true definition of poverty. That you are unable to access, you are outside that cycle of capital. Essentially meaning that whereas others are making money, you have no contribution. That's like a proper definition of poverty. So if the government was to start a social welfare.
Definition of poverty is when others are contributing, you have nothing. Ile example ya mzinga, ule msi hajatoa kitu. Like, that's basically it. Like, we unaangalia watu wengine waki, there is no way in.
And that's like the clear definition, the practical definition of poverty.
Yes.
But you know why in Africa we define poverty in terms of how much you're making per day? In Kenya, if you make more than $3 a day, would you say you're poor?
Depends.
No, like okay.
Because let's say look at someone who commutes for 200 shillings every day, right? And then they get lunch for 150. If you have a family, you are cooked, right? Like say in town, getting decent food for 150, you're already at 350 in a day. And that's if you're not using your own vehicle, right? This 100 shillings, if you have a family back home and you're the sole breadwinner, what do they eat for breakfast, lunch, and supper? You're still poor.
You see, again, another big hypothesis.
Yes.
That essentially you must incur all these other expenses for you to perhaps survive, you know. And it's a good example because that's what you look at it. But let me ask you, are there more Kenyans living that way than those who are not living that way? Are they not educating their children?
They are.
They are. So when you define it in such an abstract way, then you fail to create a path out of it. If I am able to make $3 a day, essentially I have access to the cycle of capital.
You have something coming.
Kwa hiyo mchango mimi nachangia.
Yes, yes, yes.
Assuming mimi mtu mkono nafanya kazi kwa in a construction site, I'll get paid 500 bob or 700 bob a day, is it?
Yes.
If you define me in such an abstract way that I am poor, then essentially the government then starts, instead of building capacity for me to increase, the government starts taking from others to give to me, which then creates the poverty trap.
Which is interesting because you said you cannot create wealth by dividing.
True. So
among people.
I like using an example. If you have 10 children,
yes,
and you have 10,000 shillings, and you give each child 1,000 shillings,
yes,
1,000 shillings.
Yes.
If you are to take that, tell every child to give one of your children, one child 500 bob, has it changed the total amount from 10,000? Let's say it again. We are 10 of us.
Yes.
Each one has 1,000 shillings.
Yes.
We all decide to give you our 1,000 shillings, for example. We are left with 0. Has it changed the figure from 10,000?
No. It's still 10,000 within your children, but there is one child
who has nothing, is it? There's one child who was 10,000 and there are 9 who now who don't have, is it? And that's a problem of thinking that by dividing wealth amongst many people creates wealth. It's a big problem. It doesn't work like that. The only way for these 10 people to be rich is to try create more into this pool.
Okay.
Understand?
Yes.
So when the government overly taxes one group to give to the other group, it's like the parent who's taking the 1,000 shillings and giving to one child. It doesn't change the total circulation.
Okay.
You understand?
Yes.
And the biggest challenge we have in Africa is because that kind of thinking is the reason why entrepreneurship is not growing. These young guys should be given access to the cycle and steps towards facilitating growth of the pool. Understand? So we have a lot of things we'll do. We'll introduce funds for this, funds for this, funds for this. But if they do not increase how much money comes into Kenya, forget it.
It's a lie.
It's a trap of poverty.
Okay. I also learned something today, that it is cheaper to employ someone than to fire them. Ni cheap kuandika mtu job kuliko kumfuta kazi. And companies find a way of avoiding employing people, which is also a new factor contributing to unemployment, if I may say. Please explain that to someone who's never heard that before.
So when you set up a business, especially in a place where the cost of employment is high, like Kenya, I think in East Africa, Tanzania is the most expensive. You find
Tanzanians pay better than Kenya.
Tanzanian laws. You know now determination of how you pay people is, of course, what the government says. So you find that there are places where the cost of labor is high.
Okay.
So these companies will do, they will try as much as possible to avoid direct engagement of employees. And how many multinationals are in Kenya? There are very many. Yes. How many employ directly? A handful. Because essentially, it is easier for, when you want to let go of an employee, the cost that you have to pay to let go of these employees is also very, very high, extremely high. For example, you have to pay for every year worked, you have to pay 15 days. You have to pay them leave. You have to pay them notice for termination, a total of 60 days. So if someone has worked for you for 10 years and you have a company that has 1,000 people, it is not then viable for you to set up in Kenya.
Okay.
It becomes harder for you to have that conversation because the cost of releasing them, if business doesn't go well, is also very high.
Okay.
You understand? So we end up losing jobs that would have actually come into Kenya, end up going elsewhere where the factors are lower and it's easier for you to engage and disengage. So in Africa, for example, the countries that have that big problem is actually South Africa, Tanzania, and I know of Kenya has, of late, is also becoming quite aggressive.
Yes.
And that is disadvantaging young people who would have actually joined these jobs, and they end up being shipped elsewhere.
So if I'm getting you correctly, it's expensive to employ and so forth and so forth, right? Is the expense to employ about greed and maximizing profit for the entrepreneurs? Or let's say, for example, if I have a company and you're making, say, your books read billions in profit, that if you took half and added to the people you employ, make their lives would it make their lives better first? Or there's a science to making labor cheap?
Well, of course, you know poverty is the driver for capitalism. Without poverty, there is no capitalism. You understand that?
So people have to be poor so that others can be rich.
Absolutely, and that's how capitalism works. Why do you explain that companies are able to pay as cheap as and slightly above $3 a day? Why? Because if you don't take it, someone else will take it.
That's the problem.
That's the problem, because assuming everybody could actually afford that $5. Even right now, a good example is, for example, do you think you can hire a doctor per hour for under $2? Is it possible?
No.
Why? Because there are very few of them. Is it? Meaning that they have access to better opportunities than what you're offering. Now, the reverse is not true when it comes to general labor, because there are too many who need that job. Then, of course, the price goes down. So for capitalism to work, labor as a factor of production has to be affordable and available. And you'll find companies now are obsessed with chasing where they can maximize profits by reducing the cost of labor.
So if you're doing the same thing and whatever you do, if this is now a paradox, right? We have people who have, I know we'll come to demand and supply, but I'd like to address the idea of choosing something that is unique. We have people who are blamed, as in they are victimized for being unemployed because they chose a course that no one cares about, which I believe they went to thinking that it's unique. But you also have people who, you have done the same thing. So many of you have done the same thing that we even have lawyers hooking their services. Nikutete, as in, it's that easy. Like, how do you go about choosing what to do then?
So first thing for me is to refresh our minds. And I'm hoping anyone who listens to what we're saying starts looking at it that way. That education should not be an end by itself. You know, education is not the finish line. It's the beginning of the race. So, you know, if you're educated, for example, as a BCom graduate, don't spend all your years looking for a BCom job, is it? Find how this knowledge can be used to create a sustainable business model for you. Understand?
Yes.
For example, we are using, in accounting, there are a lot of softwares we're using. Have you heard of any software that is built locally?
No.
What are all these BCom graduates doing then? Understand? And the biggest obsession is our education system has taught us to cram things and not consider knowledge with importance. And why, for example, last year, actually year to date, Kenya has received $758 million in funding.
That's
but look at the distribution. Look at the distribution. There are a lot of local guys who will have local businesses who can get funded.
They don't. Please explain this funding thing. Funding is different from going to a bank to get a loan.
It's very different. It's very different. When you go to borrow money from a bank, the bank will not accept to give them shares.
Okay.
So it's very expensive. If you don't have an asset, you don't have profits you're making, no bank will give money to you. But a venture firm who is going to give you seed capital, for example, doesn't care that you have security. They simply want to believe that your idea is going to solve a problem and has social impact. Then in exchange of them giving you this money, they will take a small percentage of your business.
How do people access these venture capital organizations in Kenya?
So there are quite a number of players, very, very many players. If you actually just look up in terms of VC firms in Kenya, you'll see quite a number of them. But then the ecosystem has different players. So you have the incubators. Incubators are guys who teach entrepreneurship. So if you don't know how to run a business, you don't know how to balance accounts, you go to incubators, they do a lot of those courses.
Yes.
You have the accelerators, and the accelerators will take a business that has already been formed, but is struggling with a few things for them to build it up for funding.
Yes, yes, yes.
Then you now have the VC firms. And the VC firms are the actual, they're the VC funds, they're the funders. You have VC firms and you have angel investors. They're the guys now who pump in money to these businesses.
Yes.
So it's very difficult for you directly to apply directly to a VC firm or an angel investor. It's very hard. In Africa, you have to go through these other channels. And you'll find that every year, they'll have call for applications. And they'll say, if you have a good business, send us a proposal. Then they review, then they'll tell you, okay, your business is lacking here, then you can get to a place where you also join other entrepreneurs of your age who can work with, and they help you figure out your business.
What stops them? Because they have the money. What stops them from just getting your idea and doing it themselves?
It's very difficult, because you remember, when a business is at idea stage, it's a hit or a miss.
Okay.
Understand? You can. There are many startups that fail. That's a fact. That's the fact. You can start a startup that doesn't see light of day. So now VC firm wants to take that risk. So you find that even in terms of funding, they'll not give you money in one check. It is in small, incremental. Stages. Yeah. So you'll have, for example, seed capital. You move that way. You go to a Series A, Series B, until now you get to a place where you are a fully funded venture and you're able now to either spin off, list, and do all those things. So it's very incremental. So the advantage is that these guys are working with you. And for young guys, there is no way you can overlook that and go to a bank.
And again, if I'm getting you correctly, if you believe in your idea and you've considered all the factors or that define a good idea, this is way better than looking for a job.
Absolutely.
And then from your experience and your interaction with money, what should be the goal when dealing with money? To be rich or to survive? Because to be rich, the game is different. To survive is also different. Getting employed nowadays, I think the idea of getting employed to retirement is foreign. Is there a safe zone to deal with money that you can survive? Let's say you don't want to be a billionaire, you just want to live. Can you live within the capitalism circle without the ambition and the greed that comes with it?
It's very possible. First, the definition of success is only in Africa we define success in terms of how big a car you drive. It's only in Africa we define success by where you live, what you wear, and so on and so forth. There is also no rule that businesses are working towards the same goal. There's no finish line. There is no business that will say that now we have achieved the finish line, we are closing. And therefore, just like businesses, it is about sustainability. Everything we do is about sustainability. So if you start a business today, keep it sustainable. If your customers tell you we do not need this, keep it sustainable by being able to adjust to the customer needs, is it?
Yes.
And therefore, it's very possible with just a bit of listening to the market and continuously listening to your customers, it's very possible for you to survive within this cycle of capitalism. At some point, when we pursue social impact, we stop working for the money. The problems we have are very small. If you look at the problems we have as human beings, are very, very small. Dressing up, looking good, having food, healthcare, they're not big problems. But whoever is solving a bigger problem then doesn't have to care about the small day-to-day challenges. And you find that if you're not able to get out of that hand-to-mouth kind of living, then you'll never see anything bigger than yourself. And you're always looking at how do I benefit, and that's how greed begins. And that's how people start stealing public resources. And that's why people cling to power and refuse to leave. Because it stopped being about the greater good. It's about what can I get as an individual.
Okay. And what do you say in your understanding of business? What do you say about diversification in the field of business? Like people are encouraged to put your hands in many things for you to be safe. Like you're in, let's say for example, you sell cars, you're in real estate, you're employed. How is that for a strategy?
Well, I'm not a big proponent of that. I tell you a reason why. If the business you do does not pay you higher than the treasury bill rate, when the government is selling treasury bills, they usually give an interest rate. Right now, for example, it's at around 13.9%.
Yes.
So if your business is not giving you 13.9% in return, then
that is annually.
Yes, annually. Annually, so you can compound it over time, comes around 1.something%. If it's not giving you that amount of return per annum,
you're wasting time.
Total waste of time. And you have a lot of guys running around, putting a lot of effort, making a lot of money, spending equally as much. If you look at the net result, it's under that 13.9% per year. Then you have no business doing it. Pick one place where you work hard, get your money, give to the government through the central bank. And actually, I think right now every Kenyan should have the central bank, a central bank account. They're asking for you to invest as little as 20, 30,000 on a T-bill, 100K on a treasury bond. Why would you take your 100K and start putting it again at risk, whereas you can simply just give the government and sit home, and they'll pay you 13.9% 2 times a year?
I had this debate with someone just yesterday when I have 2 people I talked to. One of them believes that you can live off interest. The other one talked about assets, and he was really insistent, almost actually very convincing. He said that the context was building a house. One friend believes that building a house is dead asset. You can get interest and live anywhere you want. But this other person believes that you need your house because over time your money will be eaten by inflation. So you will not have, let's say you have 20 million shillings in treasury bills. You use that to pay, you use the interest to pay your rent and cover your bills. And then say, for example, after that period matures, you take your money, buy a house. the 20 million you'll have in 25 or 20 years will not have the same value as you'd need to have a house then. But if you had a house for 20 years, you will still sell it for more.
Well, I think there are two sides to that. First, I think the analogy might not be entirely correct, because houses depreciate. That's a fact. In the 90s, do you know which was the most posh, among the most posh estates?
Buruburu.
Is it? Would you buy a house for your family in Buruburu right now, for example, and say that that's your retirement?
No.
Because what's happening is that the space itself, because of infrastructure, people building around you, roads, drainage, real estate has a way of depreciating over time, especially when there is access to capital. The other thing is, in Upper Hill, for example, in Kilimani, there are more unoccupied houses than there are occupied.
Yes.
Houses have occupancy rates of under 40%. So what does it tell you about real estate? It's again the question of demand and supply.
Yes, yes, yes.
But at least you're sure that if you want to invest in bonds, for example, the government will never pay you below the interest rate, below inflation. They'll keep adjusting for inflation.
But wouldn't you be in a position to keep praying the government doesn't have money? So that the interest rate doesn't go down?
The government never has enough money. Almost all governments survive on deficit. They do local borrowing and foreign borrowing.
Yes.
Our president has focused now that they are not going to borrow. They won't have foreign debt.
Yes.
I mean, there's going to be an aggressive demand for local borrowing. And all the things we're doing actually, by the way, if you didn't know, the housing levy, the Hustler Fund, NSSF increments, is to create a pool for government to locally borrow. So the government isn't really focused so much on the taxes we pay.
Yes.
The government is more focused on building an enough resource for the government to be able to borrow locally at 13.9% and pay people back.
Okay.
So when you think about whether to put your money in real estate or put your money in bonds to survive on interest rate, I think for me, the generation we are in, cash is king. You can take that to the bank.
Cash is better than assets today.
If say you have 1,000 acres of land and your mom is unwell, you can't treat them with 1,000 acres. You need to look for a buyer, is it?
Yes.
There might not be ready buyers for your property, is it?
Malaria ni eka ngapi?
So there are those challenges that comes with physical assets. In our parents' generation, assets were everything, but not today. How many guys are studying in Kenya but will never set foot in Kenya? There are a lot of guys. How many guys, for example, are working on gig economies? We have TaskRabbit, we have all these other economies where this guy works for an employer in the UK.
Yes.
That guy is so detached from our local shenanigans of I have a plot here, I have another plot there. It's not important because the current generation is about mobility. And the future of every developing country is mobility. The ability to follow where cash flow is. You understand?
Yes.
So houses tie people down. And actually, even when you're setting up companies, the biggest challenge is to motivate young people to work for these companies long term. They don't care about insurance. They don't care about inheritance. They don't care about retirement.
Yes.
These guys are looking at their ability to be mobile and connect to the global economy. So I really struggle to advise a young person to work so hard and get a 30-year mortgage. Why? It will not make sense. In that year from now, so many things will have changed, is it?
Okay. So how do you keep yourself alert to the shifts, to the global shifts in terms of economy and the job market and stuff? Because I feel for the person who is actively looking for a job, like the person we've given an example for, the person burning their certificates before because they feel like they've gotten to the end of the road. Like, how do you sense the shifts as an individual and as a business? Because you also advise on that. You advise a business to change strategy at a certain point. It's what you call listening to the market. How do you set yourself to stay on cue for the shifts?
So and the answer to that is a very simple answer. It might even sound idiotic. If you ever have a business that you developed in your bedroom and you thought of an idea and implemented it, then that's a bad business. And that's how
So
we
you
form our
should
businesses.
create businesses in the sitting room. As in
So point is, businesses should be built by looking at problems in your community. Not fancy ideas that I have an app that does this. You understand?
yes.
And the
I sell
and
this online and stuff.
for a fact, we have a lot of e-commerce shops, is it? But you must, and setting up an e-commerce shop is not bad. But then the e-commerce shop must solve a specific problem, is it?
Yes.
So how you keep yourself in check with what's going on is by listening to the customers. The customer, the person who buys your product will tell you what they're looking for. They tell you the challenges they're having, is it? For example, give an example of M-Pesa. And M-Pesa, for example, is like a very good model to use for, especially for Kenya. When M-Pesa came up because people were struggling. There are a lot of Kenyans who are not banked.
Yes.
There are a lot of Kenyans who, even right now, the majority of Kenyans have an M-Pesa account and very few have a bank account. And they came and asked, what problem can we solve? What problem do we see here? These guys will have money, they need to bank it, but the bank is asking for a lot of things. You understand?
Yes.
Why they will remain sustainable is because to date, they're still solving the same problem. You understand?
Yes.
So the challenge with setting up a business without thinking about the market is that you'll set up a business that makes you feel good, that fires you up and you feel now I've entered the league of people who own businesses.
Yes.
But the customers prove you wrong every time.
Okay.
You go and tell them, nauza hii naambia you hatutaki.
Okay.
It's your cue to kill the business. They say, this thing was my idea, it doesn't make sense. I need to think about what makes sense for the customers.
So basically, the most basic definition of entrepreneurship is studying your community.
Yes.
Studying the people around you and identifying a problem in the design that the person who came up with the idea of M-Pesa looked at how people are suffering.
Absolutely.
So making things easier for people, that's entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And now start finding a way you can earn from that.
Absolutely. And a big part of entrepreneurship should start where the market is. You understand?
Yes.
Set up a business where the market is. So if a lot of guys, say for example, you live in a certain area, but your idea of setting up the business is to solve a problem in a locality that you do not know anything about.
Okay.
You understand? So the advantage you have as an entrepreneur is where you have a lot of control of the variables. Even you said, for example, people struggle with shopping at night. Start a company that is able to shop for them and deliver. Is it? If a local supermarket closes early because they don't have customers, propose for them to have a system that can allow people to still shop even when they've closed and someone delivers. And you only just need to have a basic app and
Yes.
a place where you can collect your shopping, and the supermarket employs one person to sit inside the supermarket. I come with my app and say I want these things. That guy can work the whole day, the whole night, is it?
Yes.
I am solving a problem because if you're looking for milk in your locality, I can get it for you and bring it to you. Will you not pay me a slight commission for doing that work? The customer will pay, is it?
Yes. Yes.
But you find that we don't set up businesses thinking about the customer. We set up the business based on first what we know and what we are qualified and what we've watched on YouTube is working. And then we come and say, now we are going to set up this thing. And when we evaluate businesses, many businesses fail the customer test. For all VC funding,
That's the first
the
test
basic
that you have
test
to pass.
is the customer test. What need are you solving? What's the impact? If the impact is to simply put extra shillings in your pocket, forget it. No one is going to fund that kind of business. In fact, we propose you go and look for a loan in a SACCO or a bank.
So are you saying, in other words, that the greatest cause for failure is using money as motivation?
Absolutely. I think put it that way, it's actually a more accurate way.
So if you want money, you need to pretend you don't want money. So getting money through the back door, like someone would look at it like that.
For success of any business, money is important. It's a good motivator for doing business. In fact, it's a good tool to use, but it should be incidental. Chasing money should not be the only thing you do. You should also be focusing on the value you're adding, because it is the value that keeps the business within the cycle of capitalism.
Okay.
But money can't keep it in the cycle of capitalism.
How did we find ourselves in a system where we have to conform to by force, is it possible for you to live outside this system by yourself?
No, it's not possible, even for countries. We're in a global capital cycle. For every extra shilling Kenya makes in foreign exchange, another country must pay it to us.
Yes.
Or we have intermediaries such as the IMF that will give that money to us. And that's why it's not viable for any country to print a lot of money. That's the basic question that someone can ask. Then, if we have these challenges with money, why can't we tell Delaru to print for us a lot of money? Yes. For that reason, because the global economy doesn't work like that. You can only grow if you're collaborating with the rest of the economy. So unfortunately, it is skewed.
So there are other countries, as in other countries determine whether we can print more money or not.
Yeah, and that's a fundamental point.
But so the money is ours.
What's the value of a Kenyan shilling if it's not tied to the dollar? It's just a piece of paper. If you travel with 1,000 shillings to Europe, it's a piece of paper. Outside these borders is a piece of paper. Perhaps only in East Africa, and even in East Africa, they'll take it shingo pande. It's a piece of paper. What gives that piece of paper value is that it's tied back to a value of a specific amount of dollars.
Yes.
Understand?
Yes.
That we now use pricing of all our commodities in Kenya shillings, but they're tied back to the dollar. And therefore, the foreign exchange, how the economy works is that the more inflows we have of the dollar, the stronger the economy. You understand? Because there's a certain number of dollars circulating in the economy, in the global economy. So if Kenya has a lot of dollars, that means we have more buying power. You understand? So when a country goes broke, is when our reserves in CBK, we no longer have any dollars.
It's not that we don't have Kenya shillings, we don't have dollars.
You don't have dollars. You can't buy any export with Kenya shillings. Where? Even just cross the border.
Yes.
Go to Namanga.
Okay.
As you go up towards Tanzania, people start refusing to take the Kenya shilling.
So, for the people who have gone to school, studied, and they have certificates, if you ever get a job, and this explains why people send CVs and they never get a call back, they never get communication back. If you have studied, you will be lucky to get a job. You will be lucky. It's not a guarantee. So does that say there's a flaw in our education system?
Well, I think so. I think the government is trying. If you look at the CBC system, is trying to address that error. When Kenyatta became president, he said his focus was to rid Kenya of literacy, poverty, and disease.
Yes.
Now, it is no longer a focus for any developing country to be ridding the country of ignorance. What ignorance is he talking about? People know. People know more than sometimes even the government.
Know.
Kenyans know.
Are you on Facebook?
But there's a percentage. If you look at the levels of knowledge in Kenya right now, and when Kenyatta was saying those things, we've really changed.
There's a difference, yes.
So, and if we continuously have an education that is telling people, pass your exams, go to campus, after campus, apply for a job, then that's an extremely flawed system. The government, for example, has not been employing for the last 20, 30 years. They've not been employing on open contracts. What does it tell you? Previously, the government was employing on permanent and pensionable immediately after campus.
Yes.
But because of funding, we can't do that. The government is going to employ on contract to mitigate the cost of debt. So why would that same government tell you to work hard, pass your exams, and you're going to get a job? Change the narrative. Everybody's mind should change. We start thinking that there is no help coming.
Yes.
The help is in your head. Apply yourself and find that help with the knowledge you have. If you don't have sufficient knowledge, team up with a few guys, solve a problem.
Okay.
Then you're in a space where you can start controlling the success you want. But if you depend on the government and complain about jobs, well, it's a bit unfortunate, because this government is not able to pay current employees. What makes you think they're going to pay you when they employ you?
So again, this is probably the most discouraging thing I'll take from this conversation. This obsession with a side hustle is a lie.
Well, if you're doing it for the money, do it, but you know for a fact, it's a cycle of hand to mouth you've created. You will continuously work around, but the business won't grow. And I tell you, for example, if you're a tech, and for example, someone has said they're doing content creation.
Yes.
If you're doing content creation part-time, and I'm doing it full-time, what are the odds you'll be better than me?
None.
It's just how the economy works.
Whatever you invest yourself into fully, that's what will work.
For sure, and running away from the mindset that entrepreneurship is, by the way, is what we need to start teaching our kids. Teach them early. I mean, let's not teach them that money is the beginning of all evil. It is easier for the camel to go through
than a rich man to go to heaven.
Those things are wrong. You know, those are the things that we tell children. Then they grow up believing that money belongs to others, as we are waiting for the day the kingdom of God comes. You know, for a fact, we must teach our kids differently. Start investing in children early. Teach them how money works. Teach them how to count money early. By the time they get to our age, most of the things we struggle with, they will know. They tell how the global economy works. They tell you if you try this business, you'll fail.
Okay.
They're able to keep up with trends. But our education system has a flaw because you're told to cram, pass your exam, go to a nice university.
Okay.
Owners of capital in this country are not educated.
And how do these people get to own capital in this country? Did they go through a different system, or there are privileges? Like, what are the odds of someone starting from scratch? Is it just all about understanding the system? Is that the good news we carry from this show? First is entrepreneurship. You know, I've told you there are 4 things, and if you just Google, you'll see the 4 things that dictate whether you're rich or poor. Yes.
First is land as a factor of production.
But
and
you
land,
say that land is no longer...
It's a vital resource.
Yes.
And not land, no, not what we're doing, that you have a 50 by 100 in Kamulu somewhere. No, that's
50 by 100 piece
no, that's not what it means. When we speak land in terms of economy, land we mean anything that comes from the land. We're talking about natural resources, oil, water, papers that come from trees, all those things. They are compressed as land. One of the factors that determines production. Secondly is capital. And capital is either machinery or people who you can tap on, a network of people you can tap into to solve a problem for you. That's capital. That is labor. And you find in our schools we teach these 3. But the fourth one and most important, and even the illiterate people know how to apply, is entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is the ability of taking these 3 to solve a problem.
And leveraging on that.
And leveraging on it. And that's why you don't have to be super educated for you to be the richest. You just need how to figure out how all these components come together. And luckily in our society, the people with the brains to sort out this are the ones who want to work for those who do not have the brain. So we wake up every day, sit in someone's office, help them solve a problem for them to be richer than us. Isn't it a catastrophe?
Students employing A students.
That's a problem.
And you also, please confirm again, for the sake of depression, 50 by 100 in Kamulu, you have achieved nothing.
Well, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. It's a question of measuring the relevance for it. If, you know,
must you always be in this cycle, before we let you go, must you always be in this cycle? Like, there are levels that if you want to reach, you always have to be in the cycle of looking for ideas, or once you get an idea, you can settle with. For example, someone who's been employed, they've managed to get a loan, sustained employment long enough to buy a plot in Kamulu, build a house, and then like they have shelter, like food shelter, they can afford school fees. Would you consider this a success?
Well, in a large way, yes. In a large way. So remember that one of the things that we take away from us once we die is not how much we've accumulated, but the legacy we build. You know, it's what we do for those who survive us. They don't have to be children, but even the people you work for, your customers, your community, those are the things that will matter most at the end of the day.
Yes.
So someone who's been able to strive and build a house for their family, they're actually in the right direction, because now this person is no longer working for them.
Yes.
They're working for something much more than themselves. So it's an achievement by itself. But would I say that that is an end in itself? I mean, it's just the beginning of what matters.
Okay.
So if you've done that and been able to achieve that, kudos to you. But then we are all in the journey of sustainability. What is more sustainable? How do we get there? So instead of looking for many ideas, continuously talk to your customers.
When you listen to them, solve their problem, you're set.
Absolutely.
But one thing I believe we can all agree on, the concept of money is an illusion.
A big illusion. For example, let me give an example. When you receive 1,000 shillings, do you imagine you're holding 1,000 shillings?
No?
When you go take 1,000 shillings from the bank, it's not worth 1,000 shillings. It has factors of inflation to it. You could actually be holding 100 shillings, yet its value is 900 bob. 100 bob is lost the moment it becomes yours. So what are you talking about money being what it is? It's a serious illusion. Why chase such an insignificant illusion?
Okay.
Look for a bigger purpose and use money as an enabler.
Yes.
Yeah.
This show has been directed by Jackie. If she can just allow me to ask you one question. Value for money, when you're buying something. This argument came to me through a cab driver, and it really changed my perspective when buying something. When you're told that this thing is 100,000, right? Are you allowed to look at this thing in terms of the material that has been put together to buy it? Let's say, for example, this desk. Someone tells you you can buy this desk for 100,000, and you later find that you could actually get it for 25,000. What's the safest way to define value for money now that you've said that money that is thrown into the economy is the same amount of money that everybody fights for? For the money that you have, I'll offer you something to get a piece of your money, and that puts me at a certain level and takes someone else's money. How do you safely define the value you get for the 1,000 shillings you've gotten from an ATM?
So first again, pricing is another big illusion. You see, the price of one thing means it's not worth that thing. Otherwise, they will not sell it. The price of this desk, you say it's 100,000.
Yes.
If it was worth 100,000, why would I sell it then? Essentially, it means it's worth less than 100,000. And that's how pricing works. That the person selling it knows something you don't know. You understand? And that's how we're able to trade.
So business is hide and seek. Like, you know, I buy because, nakupea tu pesa because I don't know.
It's true. It's true. You only buy to the extent of what you know. You bargain based on the knowledge you have, is it?
Kenyans bargain for the sake of bargaining. So does this mean there should be an art to bargaining to get value for your money before you spend it?
So first, I think value for money, for me, depends on utility. It depends on what it means for you. For example, if I buy this desk for 100,000 and they have someone downstairs waiting to buy it at 150,000, then it's value for money, is it?
Yes.
But if I'm buying it so that when I go home and take it home, I'll not fight with my wife, that's also some form of value for money. It will not matter the price, is it?
Yes.
So it is so subjective for you to say that there is a global value for money. But information asymmetry, hiyo ndio unasema ukora ya capitalism, that I know something you don't know, is the basis of pricing of trade. That I sell something for 100K because I know it's worth 50K. If you pay me 50K, 100K, I have made money because, not because the product is worth 100K, but because I know something you don't know.
So the secret to getting rich is knowing something many people don't know.
You can summarize it that way.
Have you learned something? Yes. Wapi makofi ya Ed? Maze, thank you very much. Thank you, Sana. I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Jackie has been in my ears, akisema 30 seconds for the past 30 minutes. Asante Sana for the invaluable information. Asante. How can people reach you?
You can write to me on email, edwin@kckglobal.net.
Okay.
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm very active, Eddy_Thiong'o. And we can pick the conversation from there.
And you welcome good ideas.
Absolutely. My purpose is to work with young people, so I do a lot of support for young people starting businesses and so forth. So they can reach out if someone has something they need to ask.
Looking forward to hearing success stories from you guys in the studio na wenye wako home pia. Otherwise, that's it for the weekend edition. See you next week. My name is Dr. Kingori.